Congressman, thank you very much for coming to the Bethel dinner today. It was an honor to have you over here, especially when you were able to speak at the Knesset, who was a Russian Jew who was released in the mid-1980s, and I know you went to the Soviet Union to lobby on behalf of the release of the Russian Jews, and we see today that some of the people released because of your work in the 80s, really today complimented the whole Jewish community. So I'd like to hear a little about your feeling about being acknowledged for all your work over the past 38 years of the Jewish community.
Well, it's nice to do it, but I don't do it for that reason, as you know. When I was 12, my father put me into a meeting with a man who was a Holocaust survivor. I had lunch with him. We asked a lot of questions, and from that day on, that was my Holocaust education. He talked about the deprivations. He lost his entire family, and I'll never forget he was asked about my father, do you still believe in God? And he said, well, for my new family, yes, but I don't know if I could himself, because that's how hurt he was and how traumatized. I never lost the image of that man as we sat and had lunch. So when I got into Congress, one of the first things I did was to get involved with the Soviet Jewry issue. In my second year as a member of Congress, went over in January of 1982, spent 10 days in Moscow and Leningrad, and met hundreds of Jewish refuseniks, including this great man called Yuli Kasharovsky, who I befriended. I adopted him as my refusenik, and then worked on his behalf, got a resolution passed on his behalf, and then just started working it systematically. MFN being linked, most favored nation status, to Russia, Soviet Union, with whether or not Jews could be released. And what I also saw too was how horrible the mistreatment was. I went to a camp called Perm Camp 35 a few years later, and it was 1,000 miles outside of Moscow. And when I got there, with Frank Wolf, one of my friends, it took us 2 years to negotiate our way in. I just saw deprivations like you couldn't believe. Thin, gaunt men that looked like they were concentration camp victims. And the Potemkin village that the Russians tried to tell us, the KGB Lieutenant Colonel Austin was his name. We went into what was a makeshift cafeteria, and he says, see, they got so much food, there's food on every table. And I said, we weren't born yesterday. We just were outside. We went into what looked like a brand new hospital, small clinic. And I leaned against the wall, and I got whitewash all over me. They just painted it. That was the end of that suit. But it was just indicative of just the big lie, always the big lie. And that's what the Soviets excelled at. But who stood up against them? People like your great guest tonight, the speaker, Yuli, and so many others who just said, probably the greatest one of all was Nathan Sharansky. I've had him at 2 of my hearings. And one of them, he just said, you Americans just don't get it. You get sweet-talked by dictatorships like Soviet Union, like China now. But he said, this is how they really treated us. And matter of fact, he came up with a new definition of anti-Semitism, not to replace the old one, hatred for hatred's sake, because it happens to be Jewish, but he called it the 3 Ds of modern anti-Semitism. Delegitimization of Israel, demonization, and double standard, 3 Ds. And if you apply how the UN, the Human Rights Council, which is a farce, and so many others mistreat the nation of Israel with this double standard, delegitimization and demonization, and so many in Europe, and unfortunately many in America, now more than ever we have to redouble our efforts to fight anti-Semitism and to preserve our great friendship with the nation of Israel.
Thank you very much for everything done.
Thank you for your leadership.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.